They say one of the rarest sounds in all of nature is the sound of a progressive Western feminist unequivocally condemning Islamic misogyny. I heard a rumour that somebody heard it once, but that it was quickly drowned out by a shrill chorus of Islamophobe and racist and was never heard again. Although I'm an atheist, I'm often tempted to become religious, just so that I can ask God to keep a special place in hell for progressive feminists who excuse or ignore Islamic misogyny for cultural reasons. Women who are quick to condemn inappropriate language on Twitter and who are all intellectual tooth and claw when it comes to Christianity, but who at the first sight of a crescent moon seem to magically evaporate like fairies in the mist. I'm talking about you. You women who confidently challenge everyday sexism, but who are struck deaf and dumb in the presence of Islamic misogyny, don't seem to realise that this is itself misogynistic and is literally giving feminism a bad name. If you want to be culturally sensitive towards, I'll say it again, Islamic misogyny, you can't be a feminist. It's impossible. Besides, if you are, you'll automatically be a racist, because in your twisted progressive terms, when it comes to Islam, feminism equals racism, as does anything that challenges Islamic supremacy. And we all know that the word racist is like kryptonite to you progressives. Within your bubble of delusion, it's been magnified so that it looms over everything you think and say, and you'd rather be tasered than have it anywhere near you, so when you see it coming, you run the other way, trampling women and children if necessary. Turn a blind eye to religiously endorsed wife-beating, forced marriage, honour killing, genital mutilation, organised rape gangs, Sharia courts that treat women as less than fully human, and little girls forced to dress like nuns. Turn a blind eye to Islamic misogyny, or you'll be a racist. You racist. Any Western woman thinking of visiting an Arab country right now, especially Dubai, should think about visiting a psychiatrist first. Recently, a Norwegian woman made the mistake of telling the police in Dubai that she'd been raped. And because she didn't have 4 male witnesses, she was charged with adultery and given a longer sentence than the rapist. These cases are common in backward moral cesspits like Dubai, where Islamic values apply and therefore adultery is a more serious crime than rape, even when you haven't done it and the rapist has. This kind of backward, ugly attitude towards women prevails throughout much of the Islamic world, and it's being deliberately imported wholesale into Western society, unchallenged and uncorrected, thanks to the insane progressive view that all cultures are equal, except of course for Western culture, which is inferior. And this is making life more dangerous for women. Norway and Sweden used to be among the safest countries for women. Now they're best known for their high levels of Islamic immigrant rape, that nobody in power wants to acknowledge or do anything about, because that would be racist. Consequently, Norwegian and Swedish women are no longer safe in their own countries for cultural reasons. Indeed, Sweden has been so enriched by Islamic immigration that its women statistically have a 25% chance of being raped in their lifetime. But at least they're not racists, and that's the main thing. Meanwhile, here in England, another day, another Pakistani Muslim rape gang. Nobody can agree on what the root cause might be, but the progressive consensus is that it can't have anything to do with the misogynistic religion these men all share, and that it must be society's fault in some way. And to be fair, it is largely our fault. We've imported millions of people from Pakistan, one of the most backward Islamic countries on earth, and that's saying something, often from the most backward tribal areas where women suffer appalling treatment, where they're regularly beaten at home, where child marriage and so-called honour killing is rife, and where a rape victim is liable to be raped again at the police station if she reports it. That's if she hasn't already been murdered by her own family. When we import that culture into our society, uncritically, unfiltered, with no requirement to integrate, what do we expect to happen? And who can be surprised when it does? We even officially sanction Islamic misogyny now in Britain. We've made it respectable. We have dozens of Sharia courts that are allowed to discriminate against women purely for being women. If anyone dared to treat a person that way based on race rather than gender, there would rightly be public uproar. So where are all the feminists with their protests and demonstrations? The fact is, women's rights are less important, aren't they? And are in fact negotiable when it comes to appeasing a religion invented by men for the benefit of men that punishes women for being raped by men. The principle has now been established in Britain that we are not, in fact, all equal. Some people are inferior for cultural reasons, and they are all female. So forgive me for being blunt about this, girls, but there are more important things to get angry about than offensive language on Twitter or sexist comments about your appearance. But then I would say that because, unlike you, I believe the liberation of women from Islam is as urgent a political cause for all humanity as was the abolition of slavery. There's no room for politeness or sensitivity, and there's no reason for any. Islam's treatment of women, its entire view of women, is a sin. And if there is a God, that's what he'll be punishing, if he punishes anything at all. It's not culturally different. It's culturally inferior. It's an ugly echo of the Dark Ages. And for the life of me, I can't understand why every woman on earth doesn't oppose it with all her heart and soul. But as we all know, many of them don't, especially the ones who ought to know better. Instead, they excuse it, they indulge it, and they condone it at other people's expense because their stupid progressive politics have got the better of their common sense. If you accommodate Islamic misogyny, you legitimize it and you invite it into your own life and into the lives of your children because it's coming your way. You also help to ensure that the woman in Pakistan or Saudi Arabia who gets beaten every day will continue to be beaten and treated as a piece of property, as will her daughters and granddaughters all the way down the line. Why should these places change their ways when we in the West make it perfectly clear that we're okay with their vile misogyny for cultural reasons? It's lucky that you progressive feminists are ideologically sound enough to ignore the reality of those cultural reasons, or you might not be able to sleep at night.
It's been reported in the Swedish media that Swedish women are rejecting any attempt by Swedish men to protect them from violence or rape, if that means that they must take said protection from men that may or may not have nationalist leanings. Seriously, it's not called Stockholm Syndrome for no reason. So what's this all about? Well, it all started on the 25th of January when news of the continually deteriorating safety situation for Swedish people in the main train station in Stockholm was reported. Swedish police warn that Stockholm's main train station has become unsafe after being taken over by dozens of Moroccan quote-unquote street children. The all-male migrant teen gangs are spreading terror in the center of the Swedish capital, stealing, groping girls and assaulting security guards. They grope girls between their legs and slap them in the face when they protest. All police officers are aware of this. But let's back it up a little first. The use of the word child is very disingenuous at best. According to Ingrid Carlsquist, the number of children seeking asylum in Sweden has exploded over the last 10 years, presumably because children are granted asylum much quicker than adults, and Swedish authorities don't verify the age of these quote-unquote children. Now, Swedish journalists, being the same scum they are in most other countries, do everything in their power to maintain the lie of men being refugee children. For example, here is a picture of the fastest 14-year-old in Sweden. And here's another of a young teen cuddling with a teddy bear. The growing scandal over bogus child migrants was highlighted this week with the murder of 22-year-old aid worker Alexandria Metzer at a Swedish refugee hostel for children in Gothenburg, where her mother says residents lie about their age to get preferential asylum treatment. Yusuf Khalif Noor has been charged with her murder. When he arrived in court this week, the Somali was said to tower over his translator. One social commentator named Merritt Wagner, an author and columnist on one of Sweden's daily newspapers, claimed on her online blog in November that administrators at the Immigration Service had been ordered to accept the claim that an applicant is a child if he does not look as if he is over 40 years of age. 40 years of age. One more time, 40 years of age. So we have grown men posing as migrant children across Sweden. We also have migrant children making the main train station in Stockholm very dangerous for women through robbery and sexual molestation. So let's bring it all together. Believe it or not, there are still a few men in Sweden with spines. And before you snicker, this is what happened in response. Basically, a mob of black-clad masked men went on a quote-unquote rampage in and around Stockholm's main train station. And before said rampage, the group handed out what were being called xenophobic leaflets by the media with the message, "Enough now." Interestingly, the Swedish police have already conceded there is nothing they can do to stop the robberies and sexual molestation of ethnic Swedish women and little girls. But they've already set up a squad to stop so-called far-right mobs. Even though, by their own admission, they have yet to find anyone that was actually attacked physically when the so-called rampage occurred. So they're going to be spending their time not trying to bring order to the chaos caused by migrants in the train station. No, in their own words, we have video footage that we're looking at to see if we can spot any crimes being committed. If we do, we will try to find both perpetrators and injured parties. And if they find any, they vow that officers are also trying to track down the young refugees believed to be victims of the assaults, none of whom have reported the alleged attacks to police. I'm backing up the failure of the police to have even a single witness or even CCTV camera footage of the alleged atrocities. It's been quite convincingly shown that this supposed rampage that has been reported worldwide in the train station in Stockholm never happened. And it's a complete fiction invented by one far-left Swedish newspaper, which then syndicated through the rest of the controlled media as fact. To establish the truth of what happened in central Stockholm on the evening of Friday, the 29th of January 2016, it's necessary to start with the official Stockholm police report of the incident, which can be found on their website in Swedish. Links are provided in the description below for anyone to read. The police report makes no mention of a rampage of violence against migrants. None whatsoever. But to hell with truth when there are vicious rapists and criminal migrants to defend. So now let's see what was so xenophobic about these so-called right-wing racists and their message. We refuse to accept the destruction of our once safe society. When our political leadership and police show more sympathy for murderers than for their victims, there are no longer any excuses to let it happen without protest. When Swedish streets are no longer safe to walk on for normal Swedes, it is our duty to fix the problem. This is why today 200 Swedish men gathered to take a stand against the North African street children who are running rampage in and around the capital's central station. Police have clearly shown that they lack the means to stop their progress, and we see no other way than to hand down the punishment they deserve ourselves. The justice system has walked out, and the contract of society is therefore broken. Those who gathered today are neither your politician, your journalist, or your policeman. We are your father, your brother, your husband, your colleague, your friend, and your neighbor. Swedish men and women deserve safety in their everyday life, and we are therefore calling on all others who also see the problem to follow in our footsteps, both in Stockholm and in other places around the country, for a better future together. And this message is considered not only xenophobic but hateful by the leftist media in Sweden. And you know, actually, every time I read something from the Scandinavian media, as well as in Germany and the leftist presses in the UK, it amazes me how everything reads like a grubby pamphlet a dreadlocked self-describing anti-fascist squatter in Berlin during the late 90s might have handed you. How has this happened? How have strawmans, emotive appeals, vague tautologies, and this multi-culti dogma genuinely become the swill trough the majority of women and the emotionally infirm and weak men feed from? And remember, most media is either controlled by clickbait mentality or by extreme leftists. So in this case, the scum that pass themselves off as journalists have done this. They take a tweet by an irrelevant woman named Sophia Kappel, and I hate to bring this up, but this is not a Swedish name. Oh, and this is a picture of the tweet's author, together with the leader of the Swedish Feminist Party. Seriously, you can't make this stuff up. But anyway, they continue with the lie that migrants were attacked and ramp it up with supposed campaigns of tolerance by useful idiots like Ms. Kappel, and then spin an entire narrative around her singular, witless opinion. They then go on to say that other women have also been tweeting their fear and terror of Swedish men as well, ironically based on the lies that these media outlets have themselves created. The hashtag #NotYourWomen was supposedly trending in Sweden, with women posting pictures of themselves on Twitter alongside messages saying, "Not in my name." Anyway, the article goes on to describe these Twitter postings as a campaign. "I'm not your woman. I don't want your protection. You're the ones making me scared, worried, angry, and sad," tweeted one. Well, obviously the men that are attempting to defend the women of Sweden from sexual violence by handing out leaflets will most likely be arrested. And the migrants' criminality will most likely be rewarded with 1,500 crowns next month in welfare payments. And they'll be encouraged to continue to molest, grope, and rob women at the station with impunity. All with the tacit approval, might I add, of many feminists and women in Sweden, and in the name of tolerance and progressiveness. Now, many people at this point will recoil, and these women displaying such mentally impaired judgment as to believe that Arabs and Africans are not socialized in a much more misogynistic and intolerant culture than gender-fluid Swedish males. I think many people's first thought then is, well, I guess that's it then. There needs to be a large-scale coordinated effort to communicate the following message to all the migrants in Sweden and those that are still on their way in the Middle East and Africa. The Swedish women have spoken and they want you to rape them. There will be no retaliation or other effort to stop you. Actually, at this point in time, I think it's time for Atlas to shrug. But that's to misunderstand feminists, Marxists, and their ilk. This is one of the foundation pillars of progressiveness and their brand of ethnocentrism, in that the privileged group should not judge other groups by their own group's standards or morals. This is why Western feminists will avoid at all costs calling out Islam and Muslims for their mistreatment of women. And there is literally a large cohort of women, mostly under 35, that would rather be raped by illiterate, violent medieval savages than allow Henrik to express his masculinity, as it might be construed as racism and therefore not tolerant. But you can't really be angry with these women. For the most part, there's no saving them. Ever. They have to be controlled and protected from themselves. They're like children without the ability to learn or think rationally. But one of the most depressing things about stories like these is that a lot of other women will lap it up. Most are opinion sponges and will parrot whatever is deemed to be socially acceptable. But it seems as though things are definitely changing. And thankfully, when change does come, you'll find that most of those opinion sponges, or normal women, will follow along. It's in their nature. Social exclusion has historically been a death sentence for women, so their instincts are conditioned to avoid it at all costs. Illusions this intricate can't survive reality when it comes knocking. And to any woman who claims to feel more afraid of nationalist groups than migrants, well, they can feel free to take an unescorted stroll through a refugee camp during evening hours, or if lacking one of those, their closest Islamic ghetto. Then see if they can make that same claim again.
Hey everyone, okay, so I'm here back to my roots of starting on YouTube at a women's march once again. Yes, they are still going on despite rape still not being legal in the West. And this time I'm going to be asking a bit of a different question. Instead of asking about rape culture, instead of asking about feminist values, I'm going to be asking the most difficult would you rather question out there. Would you rather have women's rights or Islam? Let's see how they react. Women's rights or Islam?
I'm not. Is that a real choice? Is that a real question?
That's ridiculous. No.
Why is it ridiculous? I think it's a very serious question.
Considering there's only two options.
Have women's rights or Islam? What?
Why is that even a question?
We're not. This is not about Islam.
Mate,
But your rights are...
Go away.
Why are you at this rally ask that question? Provoking, like, an argument, which there's no point. Why can't we just plan together about feminism instead of you coming along here and starting a religious debate?
Because some people believe you should be stoned for the crime of being raped, and if you are protesting rape, you should be protesting the people that want to hurt you for being raped as well.
Why are you just letting this go past? Why are you doing this?
Why in particular did you use Islam?
Because there is a big problem with how women are treated under Islam.
Right. So you didn't first ask her whether or not she identifies as a Muslim?
No, I'm asking feminists.
Why are you not asking Muslim women about this? Why are you asking?
Well, you don't see a whole lot here, do you? Their husbands probably didn't let them come.
Oh my God! Did you just hear what she said to me? She said, I don't see a lot of Muslim women here. Their husbands didn't let them come. Dude, you're doing this for...
ignorant.
No,
You are
she's
so
doing this.
ignorant.
She's doing this for
You haven't read the Quran?
Go away.
I've read passages and there's a lot more violence in the Bible, and believe me, I grew up Catholic.
That's why you see Christians running people over in the streets of London.
Oh my fuck!
I think that people who say that have probably not actually read the Quran and have just been told that by the media and sucked it in. And I think we should listen to Muslim women instead of white women like me and you.
You don't think white women can be Muslim?
Yeah, I think they can. But I think we should listen to Muslim women first and foremost.
Maybe I'm a Muslim.
Maybe you are. I'm going.
I think we should respect religions, we should respect women's rights.
What if religions believe women are worth less than men and should be beaten for the crime of rape?
I don't believe that at all.
You don't believe they say that?
I don't believe that should happen, but it's not for me to say what people should believe and not believe.
Actually, this is the question I've been asking. Would you rather have women's rights or Islam?
I actually don't have a problem with Islam. I don't see it as being incompatible with women's rights.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though I can't walk into the front door of a mosque in Whitechapel.
This has come out of women trying to have their own spaces. I agree with if women want their own spaces, and in a religious context, I guess this would lead to men's spaces and women's spaces. But I don't see that as an issue.
Women's rights or Islam?
Both.
Both? You can only pick one. It's a would you rather.
I don't see what the difference is between the two.
There's no difference between Islam and feminism?
I just don't think that's the kind of question that you can ask people.
A lot of people would consider Sharia law antithetical or not compatible with feminism.
I just don't think in today's world you can ask people if they would rather women's rights or Islam.
Why not?
Well, I just don't think it's a very PC question to ask people.
Women's rights or Islam?
I'm not answering.
You're not answering? Why not?
That's not. It's not an either or.
Muslim woman.
Hi, pleasure to meet you.
Muslim woman.
All right.
And I'm here tonight because this is important
What's your name?
to us. Aratha.
Nice to meet you, Erica.
Nice to meet you.
All right, we are asking a question to everyone here. Would you rather have women's rights or Islam?
That's not a choice. We can have both because actually, if you look at the history and the facts, 1400 years ago, women in Islam were granted rights that women in the West did not have.
What about your Prophet Muhammad, who had an underage wife who he beat?
I don't believe that's true.
That is true. That is a fact.
As a Muslim practicing woman, I'm telling you that's not a fact.
I mean, we will put up the facts on the screen here for people, and they can read it themselves, but that did happen. So I think you need to look into your religion a little more.
Please do not tell me what I, as a young Muslim woman of colour, need to do about my faith.
I don't care what I don't care what color you are. I don't care what gender you are. We're talking facts right now.
So would you be asking this to a white Muslim woman as well?
Why, absolutely. Be careful with my questions.
She was complaining about questions. I don't know.
Would you rather have women's rights or Islam?
Women's rights.
Women's rights? Yeah. I wonder why they don't do this in, like, Rotherham.
So if you're not going to support the march, then I don't think it's very fair that you're here.
We're doing interviews.
Yeah, you're asking me stupid questions.
You're asking... How do you know? How do you know that my camera woman is not
On, off.
Literally, we will show you.
Off. It's a women's march. There's no men on the march.
What if he supports the march? Is that a problem?
On the march. It's not. No, you're supposed to be doing a job. No men on the march. 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 Get him out. 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 Get him out.
Y'all are crazy. Y'all are crazy.
As violent leftists rioted in Washington on Donald Trump's Inauguration Day, our AFDI correspondent Laura Loomer was there. Laura also attended the Women's March the next day. At both, she found the opposition to Trump to be angry, arrogant, confrontational, and unwilling to confront facts that disproved their positions, particularly on Trump's opposition to Islamic terrorism.
All the same shit. Yeah. You know what this march is about?
Yeah, equality for women, right? Do you think women in Islamic countries have equality?
You don't know shit.
Oh, I don't know shit?
You want that? You want it broken? Fuck out of my way, man.
No hate, no fear. He took away the civil rights page. He is a fucking Nazi. Get it, honey? Get out of your fucking mind. No hate, no fear.
We must drive him from power. We must drive him from power.
No hate, no fear.
To talk about assaulting women without consent.
People are so politically correct that they can't.
Responding to the call of march organizer Linda Sarsour, who actively promotes Sharia law in America, women's marchers repeatedly showed that they had no idea of the grim reality of life for women under Islamic law. Polygamy, beatings, honor killings, genital mutilation, and they had no interest in hearing about it. For them, Muslims are an oppressed class threatened by Trump. Jihad terror and Sharia oppression just don't matter to them.
Are you sure you have all your facts here?
Yes,
or just
you know what Sharia law is?
I understand it, yes I do.
Under Sharia law, for example, women have to be completely...
Conversation is over.
I just want to let you know.
It's over. It's over. We don't want to talk to you. You need to leave.
You should just go home. You should go home. You're going to cause problems. You're putting yourself in danger by saying that.
Oh, I am? But
yeah, you should go home.
Keep going. Keep going.
Advertising your head.
Because you're normalizing the fact that Islam is misogynistic, and you're
And so is Christianity, and so is Judaism, and so is every other religion, because religion is inherently misogynistic.
Hey, look, stop. Yesterday was a day when you could have come out to express your hate, and that's not what we're doing today.
I'm not hateful. I'm just asking.
I don't really care.
I don't think we want to.
I don't think we want them to die either. But yeah, I don't think we're interested in a conversation.
This is about women rights and equality for women. You know what they do to queer people in those countries that they're coming from? They throw you off buildings. They stone you.
I don't have an opinion on it because I'm not Muslim, so I'm not going to speak.
But you don't have to be Muslim to know that Islam's misogynistic. The fact that they force their women
it's not productive, that's all I'm
dressed in. You agree that Islam's misogynistic because a lot of Islamic women don't get to control their own body. Why not? Have a good day. Because what? Why do you wear it?
Because it dignifies me and puts my mind to the front rather than my body. This is an act of worship that I choose to do.
It's her choice, but for all too many Muslim women, it is not a choice, but comes with a grim threat of violence. Numerous Muslim women have been threatened, brutalized, and even killed for refusing to cover their heads. The Women's March did not stand in solidarity with them. These encounters show something very important about the Trump-hating, America-hating left. It simply doesn't know what it's talking about.
Good morning, ladies. It's a pleasure to be here always with Claire Booth Lewis Policy Institute. I'm just honored to be one of their speakers. It's ironic that the expression war on women did not originate in Saudi Arabia. It was not held by signs in Tahrir Square during the Egyptian Revolution. We didn't see this claim that there's a war on women in the parts of the world that women were really in a war to even survive, let alone have equal rights. But unfortunately, the expression war on women started right here in America. The only place on earth where women are safe and have equality. This is the place where I had to flee, and many other women, to have equality and respect. So it originated here in America, and it's a shame. So this war on women, let's examine and see if there is really a war on women in America, in the West. I find that there is no war on women, no bullets, nobody was even during the suffrage movement. There was no war on women. I never saw strong opposition for women's equality. During the suffrage movement, there wasn't. In the 60s, actually the women who started this movement, sexual revolution in the 60s, hardly had any opposition. And at that time, I was a teenager in Egypt. And I saw the feminist movement in America, and it was really amazing for us women in the Middle East to see it. And I thought, if we do the same thing, we'll have bloodshed on the street. And I was looking, and everybody adored these women. Gloria Steinem became a heroic figure, a legend, practically. She was honored by the media. Rarely any opposition. So what war on women are we talking about? None. There is no war on women in the West. This is a fictitious war that is designed by the far-left liberal feminist movement for votes, to scare women from voting conservative. Women who don't have time to research, who come from work, they have children, and they come and watch a few minutes of news, and they hear there's a war on women by the conservatives, and they say, oh no, we're not going to vote Republican. It's just being used as a tool to scare tactic without any basis. And it's very obvious. So right here in the West, there is no war on women. Let us see where is the real war on women. In the Muslim world, this is where there is a war on women. And it's a genuine war on women for 1,400 years. It's an unwinnable war on women. As long as Islamic Sharia law is active, which is still active, they can never defy and stand like Western women and say, we want our freedom. Because if you rebel against Sharia, you are considered an apostate, and actually you get killed. Apostasy is considered, from Islam, is considered an attack on the state. To leave Islam is not just a choice of leaving a religion. Under Islam, to leave Islam, to be rebellious against Islamic law called Sharia, is equal to having done treason against the state. And that's why they kill people who live Islam. So being a Muslim is not really a personal relationship with God, like being a Christian. Being a Muslim is a forced contract on the person with the state to practice Islam against your will, whether you like it or not. To do a feminist movement and to reject the legal system that suppresses women is equal to rebelling against the state. So this is where the war on women really happens. Let's see the feminists in the West. Have they touched the topic of Islam? I can excuse them if they don't want to touch the Middle East, if they don't want to touch the state of affairs, oppression of women in the Middle East. I can understand that. It's far away. But what about Western women in Europe who are being raped by Islamic jihadists? This has become an epidemic in Europe. There are whole towns in the United Kingdom, in Northern Europe, in many areas of Europe where Western women are actually called infidels. They are okay to rape. And there are gangs, Islamic gangs, that are raping these young Western girls. And it's been going on for several years. And there was a cover-up, actually, in the United Kingdom for an Islamic gang group that was raping little girls, underage girls. For the city council covered it up. Where are the feminists? Where are Western feminists? Fine, don't defend women in the Middle East, but how come Western women who are being raped, underage Western girls being raped in Europe and in America, there's honor killing right here in America. Where are the feminists? No, they are busy. They are busy calling, like Michelle said, Republican women, they are not females. They are, they are not even women. So this is the tragedy that's in the West, that feminism has become discredited. They are no longer defending women. They have abdicated their role, their true role to defend women. They have sacrificed their own girls who are being honor killed right here in America. There's honor killing right here in America. Whole villages in Europe where the British city council is ignoring Islamic rape of women. And where are the feminists? They are nowhere to be found.
Seven things feminists need to understand. The entire world is not a conspiracy to oppress you. No one owes you anything. There are no rights a man has that a woman doesn't also have.
I'm triggered.
Men dislike you not because of your gender. They dislike you because you're a self-obsessed, preaching, screechy, insufferable cretin. They're not attracted to you because obesity and body odor isn't attractive.
I'm triggered.
Being offended is not a form of activism. Signing online petitions to ban all the things is not a form of activism. You don't have a right not to be offended. Facts matter more than your feelings. Disagreeing with your stupid opinion is not harassment.
I'm triggered.
Biology has a profound impact on gender roles. Men and women are different and they excel at different things. It's science, bitches.
I'm triggered.
Manufacturing an entire grievance industry out of thin air and then leeching money off it isn't a respectable way to earn a living. Stop being lazy and get a proper job. The world doesn't need you.
I'm triggered.
An ideology that needs to be protected by safe spaces because it can't stand up to scrutiny is a weak and pathetic ideology. An ideology that resorts to censoring its critics because it can't compete in the marketplace of ideas is regressive and doomed to failure.
I'm triggered.
There is no evil patriarchy oppressing women in the West. When it comes to women's rights, the West is the most tolerant place in the world. There is an evil patriarchy oppressing women in the Middle East. It's called Islam. While you're whining about manspreading and fat-shaming, women in the Islamic world are being sexually mutilated and stoned to death.
I'm triggered.
Get some fucking perspective.
I'm triggered.
I'm triggered. I'm triggered. I'm triggered. I'm triggered.